Last time we looked at exhaust elbows and why they fail. This time we're going to look at something equally as important, your raw water pump, the cooling for your engine. Now this is quite a long video, but I think you'll find it useful. So here's a quick diagram of how it works. Seawater or raw water is drawn in through our drive leg into the seawater filter, via the seawater pump and into the heat exchanger. It is then pushed through a pipe into the exhaust ejection elbow and out through the exhaust pipe and over the transom. Now the heat exchanger does exactly what it says. It exchanges the heat in the coolant from the engine with the raw water or seawater, cooling the engine. It basically replaces the radiator on a car or truck. Both of these are completely different circuits. Some bigger engines may also have an oil cooler in the same raw water circuit. So this is the water pump on our Volvo D130F. And what we're going to do today is we've had water leaking out the back of the pump, and it's in this little slot here. This little slot here. It's been running down and causing some corrosion. So rather than do it on the engine, what we're actually going to do is take the pump off. So first thing we want to do is to isolate the engine, just in case we touch anything electrical. I always recommend people use a nut spinner or a socket to undo Jubilee clips or hose clips as they're called. It saves you damaging yourself or your engine. A top trick when you, let's bring you down so you can see, when you undo this bottom hose, you want to twist it slightly. That breaks the seal and off it comes. Some bit of salt water in the bilge, and we'll clean that out in a minute when the job's done. And I'm just letting the water run through the pump because this hose has got quite a bit of water in it too. Just gently prise that way. Just turn it as you take it out. You will get a little drip of oil, but that's the pump out.
So, just pull it out with long nose pliers?
Yeah. How this actually works is you've got the water coming in the top here. The water gets pulled into these
like a windmill
cavities, yeah, just like a windmill.
A watermill, I mean.
And then when the water gets to here, this cam starts to compress. And because you cannot compress a liquid, it forces it out of here.
Yeah, so the volume there is about a third of the volume there.
Exactly, and you can't compress a liquid, so it has to go out of here.
Yeah.
So that's what the cam does, and the cam's also where.
Now I thought it pushed it out on that way.
No.
You know, my imagination was that it forced it down the hose. It would have forced naturally down that hose, but it's actually forcing it back through there.
It's 2 cubic centimetres, maybe more,
yeah.
Maybe 3 cubic centimetres. Every time one of those lobes goes past there, it forces 3 cubic centimetres of water out of this, and it does that 6 times every revolution. So we're going to scrap this one because it's been in there a year now.
Okay.
And we're going to extract that out. And
You might need these.
There's a couple of schools of thought. I usually extract them by grabbing hold of that and quite literally
pulling it out. That's what I did on mine last year.
Pulling it out, but just pulling it bit by bit.
Yeah. I had one of my fins off and broken off when I changed mine last April.
And did you get it out of the heat exchanger?
It was just at the entrance to the heat exchanger.
But as you can see, it's almost there now. There we go. Now it comes. The problem with these pumps is there's an oil ring in there. Sorry, an oil seal, but it actually stops water coming out of the pump and into the engine, and that's why it's got that little gap there. Now on that oil seal there's a spring, and those springs are stainless steel, and if your engine sits still for any period of time you get crevice corrosion in the stainless. The spring breaks, and then what happens is
the seal's not performing its job. The O-ring's not doing its job.
I have seen people change those springs for an O-ring, but I don't know. If you put too much pressure on that O-ring, what you'll actually do is wear the shaft.
Yeah.
You'll wear a groove in the shaft.
Yeah.
So Woody's doing the same job as us, and we just lent him a tool and had to borrow it back because we're doing our water pump. We've
it's been a well-travelled
exactly. So we're just explaining through. I'm just going to show Woody how to use the extractor to pull off the drive cog. And on yours, Woody, you've got a drive belt, haven't you? A V belt.
Yeah, we got the belt that goes around the end of the camshaft, I think.
But he's now going to video it so that he can play it back when he gets back to his boat and reference it to your channel as well.
Yeah. I'll stick a link on.
Stick a link on. Alright, brilliant. We'll do the same. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to pull this sprocket off of here. I think we might have to adjust the legs, but let's have a quick look. Might just make it. Okay, so what those legs do is the legs sit underneath the gear wheel and the centre nut pushes on the shaft, and that's the new shaft there, and it's tapered. There's no spline on it or keyway, it's just tapered, so it's just force that's holding that on. It looks like to me that they've Loctited that as well, which is good practice. So all we have to do now is just make sure those legs are on there, and take a spanner, just gently hold that, and what will happen is it will start to pull, and there it goes.
Jeez.
So that was on there tight.
Yeah. So that was the Loctite.
That was the Loctite braking, and that will now pull off there. I usually go with a bang, but I wasn't going to. That then comes off. I'm gonna soak this and clean it all up and that, just to make sure before I put it back in the engine it's clean. But on ours, inside there's a little circlip. You see that in there?
Yeah, I saw that in the diagram.
Can you see that, Cindy? In there?
I suppose the only way to get that is with a circlip.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
So there's a circlip down there, just in front of the bearing.
So these things are cheap, and you can use them in the two-legged version or three-legged version.
Yeah.
And you can actually buy hydraulic ones as well, but they are so useful on the boat. There's about 3 or 4 pulleys on the boat that you would never have got that undone by hand.
No.
To be honest, I've never seen anyone tear one of those out, but they get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And if they keep going, that's a sign that the bearings are gone. So if you want to check your bearing, you can do it pretty easy. Just put it on something firm and just try and wobble that, and you know that's absolutely solid.
Okay, so just try and move the shaft, and if you get any movement in the bearings, it's a sign that it's gone, yeah.
If you were in a workshop, what you'd do is you'd bolt this down. You'd put a magnetic holder here with a dial gauge, and you'd just push that, and you'd measure what's called the end float. Right, and there's a limit to the amount of end float that you can have. On this one, you know me, I look after my engines, and that bearing is just as good as new. Yeah. You know, if you feel that bearing, Woody, you try and move it sideways or turn it, and that you know it's absolutely as new.
So if you've got a boat like ours and you don't know when the bearings will change, would you? I mean, if you're taking it off anyway, you might as well change it.
If you're taking this off, right, and you've got the kit there, if you feel any end float in there, or the bearings are graunchy or rough, and there's not that smooth bearing action, just change them. Don't mess about. Change them, because there's nothing worse than changing that oil seal. This oil seal, changing the back one, and then 3 months later having to do it again, because what happens is, if the bearings go and you get this end float, it wobbles around at this end and wears it out prematurely. So it's false economy. You're doing the job 2 or 3 times over.
So I suppose if you don't know if yours has ever been done, it's probably worth doing the whole thing.
Yeah, well, if we've got to take it off anyway, might as well.
But if you've got to take it off, just feel the end float and feel the bearings, and if they don't feel like that, you know, then I'm just going to shield it so it doesn't ping out and hit someone in the eye. There we go. So that's the circlip. We've just pulled that in. That then seats in a little groove that's machined in there, just bored in there, and then this will slide
easily and effortlessly.
Yeah, I'm just going to give it a little tap with a screwdriver handle. It's coming. I need to grab it with a bit of rag.
Usually got one on your pocket.
Using something soft so that you just don't damage. There's your 2 bearings. The front oil seal, the one that's in here, sits in front of that, and then the water seal sits on there. And there's that broken spring. Look, can you see it?
Oh yeah.
You see in there? The spring's broken. There it is. There we go. Broken spring. So that's what causes the front seal to fail. So before replacing the oil seals, what we did was took the kit and measured and compared the cleaned up shaft against the original shaft to make sure we got the right dims, and yeah, absolutely spot on. So no shaft wear after cleaning up, and it was just a case then of replacing all the seals and putting it all back together again, checking the bearings and making sure everything was alright. That's all seating properly. And now that's seated in okay. Slides on like so. Split washer. And a little drop of Loctite. We don't want that coming off and rattling around the engine. Let's see which side of that nut was down. It was that side. Rotate that 90 degrees. Rotate it 90 degrees again. Figure of 8 movements. I'm going to push this in with it clockwise. Rotation. So a new faceplate, I'm just going to lap that in using the same method. Figures of 8. Turn it 90 degrees. New faceplate on. I'm going to tighten this up as if it was a cylinder head, so just finger tight there, and then opposite, just finger tight, opposite, and that's it, job's good. All I've got to do now is clean it up with a bit of thinness, and then we're going to give it a coat of paint. So after hardening in the sun for about an hour or so, nice Volvo green coat of paint applied, pump is ready to go back on.
So now all we have to do is take the water out the bottom of the bilge, clean the oil up, wipe the engine over, job done.
This is a job you can do with a few tools. Number 1, take your time. Number 2, plan what you're going to do. Number 3, make sure you have all the parts you may need. Number 4, do not hit any parts or hammer metal to metal. Number 5, work clean and use water when lapping. Next time, Ant will be hanging around. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and share with your friends.
Sail safe.
Sail safe.